again, welcome back to the MetaStellar YouTube channel. My name is Maria KOROLOV. I'm the editor of MetaStellar and of HYPERGRID Business, where we cover enterprise uses of virtual reality. Today with us, we have Anders Gronstedt of the Gronstedt Group, and he's an expert in building virtual reality simulations for organizations and companies and other enterprises. Thank you, Anders, for coming back to talk to us today about virtual reality.
Hey, thank you so much, Maria.
And on the previous segments, we talked about use cases of virtual reality where companies are actually getting them to work, and about the kind of headsets and software platforms that are the best fit. And those segments will be linked down below, as well as we'll provide links to everything else we mentioned on during the conversation. Today, we're going to talk about how much does it cost, how much time does it take, and what skills are required to build a virtual reality simulation if you want to build one for your organization. So thank you, Anders, for coming to talk about that, because I understand you are an expert on this topic and this is what you do.
Yes, right. Yeah, thanks so much, Maria. Yeah, we already talked about the hardware cost, which is becoming more and more a smaller piece of the total budget. It's usually the software development that costs most. And what has a lot of our corporate clients sometimes a bit confused is they will ask questions like, well, how much does half an hour of VR cost? And in the e-learning world and the world of video production, that's usually how you price things out. In virtual reality, if you talk about actual real VR, where it's developed in a real-time game engine, the cost drivers are very different. There's usually a bigger upfront investment in modeling your, say, your store or your equipment or your manufacturing facility or your warehouse or your products in 3D, particularly if that has to be customized and look exactly like it does in real life, which is typically a requirement. Developing that the first time is a pretty labor-intensive process, and you have 3D artists doing that, typically based on photo references, video references, sometimes 3D assets, but in order to make it run on a mobile device, you typically have to start from scratch. You can't just import a big honking CAD file into Unity and have it run on a mobile device. So you end up modeling all that. And so the cost of the first program is always going to be the most expensive one and the most time-consuming one. And our programs tend to take maybe 3, 4, 5 months to develop, just depending on the scope. We're talking about a team of a handful of 3D artists and programmers working alongside with project managers and learning designers, importantly, who will work with the client's subject matter experts and tease out what the performance objective of the simulation is. And then design it around those goals. So it requires a combination of sort of your traditional learning design skills with a game development team that has a background in working with real-time game engine. And cost, it can be 3, 4, 5 months for a team of maybe 5 people. So you can do the math. It can be maybe 100,000, 150,000, 200,000. The first time you do something. But once you have that developed, you can do so much in that same environment and with that same equipment. You can do different type of training. It can be safety training, productivity training. And so you can really leverage that investment well. And I'll also say that the software, I mean, Unity and Unreal, they're going to be around for a long, long time. And as soon as new headsets come to the market, you can still use the same build. So it's a very future-proof approach, but you do have to take more of a long-term investment approach with VR, and it can be a tougher sell than your traditional, say, video production or e-learning program.
Are there any cases yet where the environment is pre-built? So say, for example, you talked about a use case of a laboratory environment where you're learning how to do things with beakers and blood samples.
Yeah, right.
Are there any commercially available kits that you can get where you can assemble your laboratory good enough based on content that's already available, say commercially, or that's pre-made because you've worked with similar clients in the past?
Right. So that's always the fantasy. But reality is, even with a single client, like we're working with pharma clients now, and they will go, oh, in this lab, we're using this equipment. Oh, we don't use pipettes there. We use syringes in this lab. So even within a single client, being able to figure out what can be standardized across their labs is sometimes impossible. We have to develop different versions. And when you get to different clients, even something you would think, yeah, like a pharma lab would be very standardized, but it's like the depth of the biosafety cabinet, the exact tools that they're using, it's all different. So we end up customizing it for each client. Certainly there's some code and like tubing is something that we worked on a lot to make it look natural, that we can use for one project to another. But most of the assets, you would think at some point we'll be able to start reusing them, but it's tends to be a lot harder than you think because everyone wants it exactly that way.
What about soft skills training? Like, for example, giving a questionnaire to a new medical patient or sales training. Do you get called on to do those in virtual environments, and can you reuse assets for those?
Right. So the promise of VR being the ultimate empathy machine has also been one of the promises of VR and one of the fantasies about VR. And there's certainly a lot of academic research backing that up. The idea that, for instance, 4 minutes in a virtual mirror in VR, where you're standing in front of a mirror and you're a different gender or ethnicity, for instance, you will facilitate the body transfer illusion where you really feel like you become that person. So it holds a lot of promise, but actually developing programs, no one has really cracked that nut. A big part of it is conversational AI, still has such a long way to go. And modeling, turns out one of the biggest, so talking about cost drivers, one of the biggest cost drivers in VR is non-player characters. Modeling and animating characters in VR is still a very labor-intensive process, and most companies tend to resort to having live people sort of puppeteering the other characters, which of course is not a very scalable solution.
And finally, I wanted to ask you about environments for virtual meetings, which a lot of vendors have been pushing lately. I guess you can reuse virtual environments in meetings. You don't need non-player automated characters, bots in there, because people are using it for meetings. Yeah. And you can have almost any meeting space could work as a meeting. Sure. In practice, is anyone doing that?
Yeah, I mean, if all you want is a generic looking meeting environment, there's Altspace and Facebook Horizon and all kinds of environments out there. I just find that the value of a generic environment like that is fairly limited. The real promise of VR is, of course, to have an environment that's customized to what it is the meeting is about, being able to talk about a product or an equipment, or have a visualization of in front of you of what you're talking about, and then you're back to having to customize those assets.
We talked about a little previously that it's hard to do a virtual meeting in VR because you can't take notes.
Yeah.
You can't check your calendar, see if you're free that next day, or to schedule a follow-up call.
Yeah.
And it's a lot easier to do it in Zoom. Have you seen any of your corporate clients crack that and start doing virtual meetings in VR, or is it still way too impractical?
Yeah, you know, we in our little organization, we of course try it all the time, but we end up giving up a lot of times. If it's just about getting together a small group of people, there just isn't enough value in it. If it's about actually testing out something that we built for a client, of course, then that's a whole different story. But yeah, the benefit of spatial awareness, it's nice to see where people are standing, hear them from the direction of the standing, being able to gesture. But does it add enough value to justify equipping everyone with VR headsets? And if you're anything like me, you have back-to-back meetings all day long. I think we almost all do. And being in VR for hours and hours can be pretty draining.
So are you guys yourselves working remotely right now?
Yes, we are. We had to close down the office at the beginning of the pandemic.
So when you have a quick meeting, a status project update or something like that, how do you hold your meetings?
Oh, we just use old-fashioned Skype and Zoom, and and with clients, typically Teams. But whenever we obviously have a new version of something we develop for clients that we need to look at together, then multiplayer in VR is so powerful. The ability, for testing things even out, it's so powerful to be able to, for all of us to go in together and kind of kick the tires of what we just developed and test things out and talk to each other while we're doing it. So as long as you have a purpose for it, there's a 3D environment that you're interacting with, then having a meeting in VR is awesome. And it's going to get better and better. Oculus already have these things where you can see your physical keyboard through the VR headsets. So I know it's a step. It's a small step. So it's going to get better. I mean, all of this, I don't think even Zuckerberg believes that it's really a solution today. It's all looking down the road where we have lightweight AR glasses and can do things like this on the fly.
So I want to ask you about building it yourself, either because you're hiring people to do it, or because you want to, as an individual, you want to learn to become a VR developer. What skills would you recommend someone go out and learn right now if they want to get into this space because they think it's going to be a hot career in the future?
Yeah, and I'll encourage anyone to do it. It usually falls down to either you're on the art side and you're a good 3D artist, in which case obviously an art training background is more appropriate, or you're on the programming side. There are people who try to do both. I've yet to meet anyone who do it really well. You can just tell if it's one person hacking something together that it's either looks amazing but doesn't interact very well if they're an artist, or it interacts well but looks like crap if they're a programmer. So it's a team effort for sure. You need those talents, along with, of course, someone who can interface with a client and understand, in our case, what the learning objectives are of what you're developing. So someone has more of a strategic insight, as well as, of course, subject matter expert on what it is you're developing the program on.
Okay. So,
and I would, yeah, just one last point. I know there are a lot of learning professionals who are looking at developing these skills. It's certainly doable, but it's a huge commitment. This is nothing at all like learning an e-learning authoring tool. It would require really a career change for a learning professional.
So if I'm a learning professional, I can get a job with you guys as a learning professional to develop the learning part. Exactly. And leave the art and programming to somebody else.
Yes, right.
So
and if I talk to someone who claims they can do all that, I'll be very suspicious, and would want to look at what they've actually developed. And I have yet again to meet anyone who can actually do all these things well in one person.
So if I want to get into the VR side of it, the VR art, creating the virtual environments and the virtual objects, what is the hot platform for me to learn right now?
Well, so for the actual 3D development, it's the Autodesk suite, Maya and Max, typically. And it's kind of a religious war between the two. I don't want to step into that.
Maya and then 3D Max.
What was that?
Maya and 3D Max.
Yes, right, yeah. And then, so that's typically where you model it, and then you import it into, in our case, typically Unity or Unreal. Again, they're really both very equal at this point.
And then if I'm a developer, is this where I would learn Unity or on the Unreal Engine?
Yes, right.
And which one is one of them shaping up to be the standard for enterprise simulations like the ones that you do?
Yeah, that's a great question. Unity definitely has, by tradition, has most market share in corporate learning, largely because they were they've been free for a much longer time. And so a lot of people jumped into Unity development. Unreal is now free for learning development, which is awesome that you have two such great game engines. They make all the money on consumer entertainment games, so it's free to use for learning purposes. And there is some arguments that perhaps while Unity is has the biggest market share in the corporate training sector, Unreal might have the best prospects, of course, that are fueled by the Fortnite success and the billions flow again from that. And they're now making a lot of the multiplayer capabilities and other things from Fortnite available for serious simulation developers.
And
so,
do you also
yeah, if I was starting from scratch, I would probably give Unreal perhaps a closer look right now.
And is there any programming languages that you would recommend that somebody learn?
Yeah, but now I'm out on thin ice. Yeah, that's related to the choice of Unity versus Unreal. One of them is, I think, Unity is C# and Unreal is using it now. So I have to check with my team members on that.
We can pause right now so you
Yes.
can look it up if you want to.
Yeah.
Which, since you're not wearing a VR headset,
Yes.
you can.
Yes. Actually, I'll quickly type. Yeah, you can tell I'm on the business side. All right, let's see if I get a response. Let's see. Did you have anything else, or was that enough?
No, that was actually my last question.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. Oh, yeah. This.
I'll make a note to edit this section out.
Yes. Okay.
And add in the links to 3D Max, Maya, Unity, Unreal.
Okay.
And when you hire people, do you usually? I'll ask that when you come back.
Yeah.
You got Fortnite right there behind you.
Yes, right. Okay, so all right. Unity is primarily C#. Unreal is C++. Or something like that.
All right. Now, when you're hiring people to do this, I'm going to guess that there aren't people with a lot of experience out there. So you're going to be hiring people who are fresh out of college or out of like non-degree training programs. Would you hire somebody who learned this stuff online?
It's all about the portfolio and their body of work. But we actually have a team of developers who work together for a real long time. And that's something else that's important, is to have people who are working well together and have a history together and can speak in shorthand with each other. Yeah, other than that, it's mostly based on what you made and looking at the actual. It's not so much about what schools you went to, but your portfolio work.
Mm-hmm. Can somebody put together a portfolio purely through online classes? Yeah,
there's some great classes these days. So yeah, I would say absolutely.
Anything you would recommend?
Well, I have a good friend, Julian Ling, who teaches at the University of Colorado, but that's I think that's online. Yeah, no, I couldn't tell.
Okay. All right. Well, if you do think of anything, let me know, and we'll add it to the links below.
Yeah. Did you want to do the question about the programming language, or did you get that? Or
yes, you told us that it was C# for Unity and C++ for the Unreal Engine.
Yes, right. Yeah.
Which kind of makes sense. For some reason, I would have guessed that.
Yeah.
I don't know why. but it just seems like a good fit.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you very much for taking time to talk to me. I really appreciate it. I hope you'll come back
absolutely.
later
Yeah.
when you have some cool new stuff to show us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much,
All right.
Maria.
And
Yeah.
thank you very much for taking time to talk to us.
Yeah.
If you guys want to see more content like this, click like, subscribe. I don't know, all that YouTube stuff. It's down in the below area. We are supported by volunteers and our Patreon supporters, and the links to our Patreon page is down below as well. And your support goes to pay for original speculative fiction. So we thank our donors very much. See you all next time. Bye-bye.